Uncle Trump has one shot, one opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment with the freedom of vengeance. But what DC with, y'all?
Vivek's palms are sweaty, his next big job gets heavy. There's curry on his sweater already, mom's tandoori. He's nervous, but DOD is getting order ready to drop bombs, cause he gon' got the fat with Vetty. He goes down, DC crowd cries so loud. He opens his mouth, the words if I just come out. They choking now, we the people joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, back. Snap back, DOD, Elon.
Venezuela, what now? How will the recent capture of Maduro affect the cartels and countries like Mexico and Cuba? Well, today the MAGA Kingdom Report welcomes Mr. Art Del Cueto, who is a retired Border Patrol agent and is an expert in border security, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. Mr. Del Cueto became a national spokesperson for Border Patrol agents, regularly engaging with policymakers and the public on matters of border security. He has been speaking at rallies alongside our great President Trump, attended multiple meetings at the White House, and even testified before Congress on issues affecting national security and frontline agents. Welcome to the show, Art, and thank you for your service.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Fabulous, because you really know your stuff, and we need to know exactly what's going on because so much has been happening over the year, but also particularly this week. So let's start from the beginning because I've been dying to ask you this question. How would you compare Trump's southern border today compared to the Biden-Harris border of just a year ago?
Oh, it's like a light switch on and a light switch off. I'll tell you that much. It's that big of a difference. No, look, we had it good under President Trump the first time he won, right? And then the second time he won, that Biden ended up being president. I like to add that. It was a mess under the Biden administration. It was a country with no borders. That's the best way I can describe it. So you had the fencing there, you had the ports of entry, but anyone that would come across could just simply say the words asylum. So if you have documentation, you come through the port of entry. If you didn't have documentation and you wanted to avoid the line, I guess, you would just come illegally and say you were asking for asylum, and the administration would allow you to come in then as well. So that's why I've always said it. Under President Biden, it was honestly, we were a country without any borders. And I think even furthermore, with less laws that we have, President Trump took over office and single-handedly, I mean, obviously, you have other people in the agency that, have contributed. You have Kristi Noem, the Chief Banks has done a fantastic job, Tom Homan. But it's all possible because President Trump single-handedly was able to close down the border. He did it with policies. He did it, a lot of it, he did it with rhetoric. Even before the policies came across, he sent a message to the entire world, and he said, if you're going to come across and you don't have proper documentation and you're going to claim asylum, you're going to have to prove your asylum claim. You're just not going to just say the words asylum and get released. So that alone, that was just rhetoric, and he took care of closing down some of the border. So he's done a fantastic job, but we need to remember, this is what's very important. He did a great job with policy and making sure that the law was followed, but laws haven't been changed. There hasn't been a change in immigration law. And I think that is the problem. That's something that we need to look at moving forward, is this could all go away if we're not careful. This could all go away overnight if we don't watch and see the elections moving forward. People often say that this last election was the most important election of our lifetime. I disagree. I think the most important election of our lifetime is going to be every single election moving forward, because we're right at that edge where you have the left that's been indoctrinated a certain way, and we just got to make sure that we continue the right course for our future.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Greece, all right? And
Okay.
we have no borders, all right? So everybody from Africa, from the Middle East, the Muslim overtake of Europe, guess where they go through? They go through my country, Okay, because the borders have
Yeah,
been down. Now, as of last week or a couple of weeks ago, they closed the borders. I don't know what that means necessarily. All I know is that this year we're going to have more Muslims in our country than native Greeks. Think about
wow.
that.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's
so the whole culture has changed because it's one thing, like you're originally from Mexico, I'm originally from
correct.
Greece, right?
Hmm.
We come to America and we assimilated. We became America first, baby, all the way. So, these are the type of people, whether I don't care where you're from, whether you're from Asia, whether you're yellow, purple, whatever, you come here and you become part of the melting pot to contribute and become a good neighbor to your community and provide some kind of a service in a positive
Right.
way. But
No, and I think a lot of it though is people get scared by just the word assimilation. So they hear, you tell them, "Hey, you got to assimilate," and they think, "Oh, what does that mean? Do I got to reprogram? What does that encompass?" And I don't think they understand it. I mean, I can relate from the Hispanic side, and I talk to people all the time. You got this is what's funny. You have all these groups, especially in California and in Arizona, and I mean throughout different parts. And they say, "Hey, the border didn't cross us. The border, we didn't cross the border. The border crossed us." They all say that,
wow.
and they say, "Oh, my Aztec blood, and I'm Aztec," or they say I'm Mayan, and I always tell them, "Well, you know that the Aztecs and the Mayans never lived in California or in Arizona. In fact, they didn't even live in northern Mexico. They lived even further south. But they always use those kind of I call it prison theology. And
Ooh.
the reason I say that is because so I was a border patrol agent for 21 years, but before that, I was a corrections officer in the state of Arizona. I worked maximum
Mm.
security prisons. And a lot of it, I dealt with the gangs within the prison system. And that's something that it's kind of folklore that the gangs utilize of, oh, the Aztec, this is our land. And they just continue to repeat those words. So they don't understand, what assimilation means. We say melting pot, and then but they don't really want to melt into the pot. That's what it comes down to. And I think a lot of it has to do with we have a lot of individuals. And so my parents came to the United States legally, and they taught me to love this country. And I grew up loving this country, the red, white, and blue. I stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. I would stand up. I still to this day, if I'm at home and the Star Spangled Banner is playing on the television, I stand up in my living room. I mean, that's how much respect I have for this country, and I love this country. But I think we have a lot of individuals that came to the United States illegally or legally, right? And they didn't have, they didn't want to stay here. So they come to the United States. They continuously tell their kids how great it was in Mexico, that it was better there. It's not good here. But then they end up having children in the United States. So those children, they're U.S. citizens. They were born here, but they go from school to their home, and their parents are constantly telling them that it was better in Mexico, that it's not good here, that hey, back home and back home. That's their whole nonstop, pushing at in their homes. So they don't grow up loving this country because their parents never teach them to love it. All their parents keep telling them is it was better in Mexico because their parents themselves had no intentions of staying here. But then once they were here and they realized, hey, it's a lot better here than it was where we were, but they just won't admit it. That's part of them not wanting to assimilate. They don't want to assimilate. So then they have their kids and they don't want their kids to assimilate. So their kids grow up not just not loving America, but almost with a hatred towards America. But they certainly don't want to leave either.
I see your point because my parents came here also legal, and my mother was 8.5 months pregnant. So 2 weeks later, I was born on Columbus Day. So they thought it was the biggest stroke of luck,
Yes.
for our family, which
It
was
was a sign. It was a sign.
yeah, with no money in their pockets. And, my father hustled washing dishes. I think all new immigrants, I don't care where you're from, you start off with the labor jobs because that's what
Right.
you get.
Right.
Okay. So he worked, washing three dishes at three different restaurants, right? So you did what you have to do till he got the union job. Then he was able to buy the house and live out the American dream. What I fear what's going on these days is there's a sense of entitlement.
Hmm.
And we see this from some of the cultures, and this is not racist. This is just a general kind of evaluation that we haven't met. It's in the news, okay? Like what's going on right now with the Somalis in Minnesota. The fact that you have to have 81% of any culture being on welfare, okay? I mean, why did you come here to, drink from the teat of the America,
Right.
taxpayer? So this is why we're all for legal immigration because we get to vet you and what can you contribute, and keep your culture. Well, I have my Greek flag. I'm very proud of my Greek culture. I'm sure you are too of your Mexican culture. And I have friends in Mexico City, and this is Mexico City is beautiful, so there's a lot of beautiful places everywhere. But the sense of entitlement, and then when you don't get what you think you deserve, is a
Right.
very dangerous thing and it's manipulated. It's politically being manipulated. But the good news is, I think a lot of people are seeing it. So you don't want to be associated and be one of those. But anyway, well, I'm getting a little off track. We could talk all
No,
day.
no, you're right. No, 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 but you're right. You're on point. Look, that's what it comes down to. People come here. My dad used to tell me this. If the country we left was as good as people keep saying it was, we never would have left it. I mean, that's just what it comes down to. You come here and I constantly hear we're a country of immigrants. I don't think we're a country of immigrants, or I think we're more a country of settlers. That's how we first started. Now, I guess we have evolved into a country of immigrants. I guess I should say we didn't start as a country of immigrants. We started as a country of settlers. Became immigrants. But part of being an immigrant is, like you said, you got to accept and love this culture. Or else, why did you leave? I mean, honestly, I say that to people all the time. Hey, America's got this issue that. Then why are you here? I mean, it's just that simple. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if you come here, you want to contribute. And in America, I mean, it comes down to that. Do you want open borders so you can just give everything out for free? Then this country isn't going to be as good as everyone wants it to be or everyone knows it is. If you just start handing everything out for free, it's about coming here, assimilation, of course, and it's about being grateful. Don't bite the hand that feeds you is a very, very, very true statement.
Absolutely. And you know what? So much has been going on um with, dealing. I'm sure you've dealt with a lot of the cartels. You've seen a lot over those 21 years. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so I'm right in the corridor with all the cartels. I worked most of my career in Arizona, which was on the Tohono O'odham Native American reservation, and that is the main corridor for drugs coming into the United States. During the Obama administration, that area, that corridor, was responsible for over 40% of all the seizures in the entire country. And
Wow.
it continues to be an alleyway for drug trafficking. And a lot of it is because of the media. I point the finger at the media on this one, and it on both sides, the right-leaning media and the left-leaning media. It is just so much easier to go to Texas. A lot of people go to Texas, and the governor there is welcoming, the state troopers are welcoming, the mayors. It's just easier to go to Texas and be able to film and say, I was at the border. So a lot of individuals go to Texas because they can stay in a decent hotel 10 minutes away from the actual border. They go there, they stay there for a weekend, they get their story, they take their pictures by the fence, and they're good to go. Arizona is very, very unique. So Arizona, when you start talking about the Tohono O'odham Nation, which everyone calls the TO Nation, okay, because it's just so harder to say Tohono O'odham, right? And so the Tohono O'odham Nation, you're looking at over 60 linear miles with Mexico
Hmm.
that pretty much is open border. And a lot of those areas, the most fencing that you have to this day is 5 strands of barbed wire. That's it.
Wow.
Then there's other areas where you have 1 strand and it's literally a foot and a half off the ground. That's
Wow.
that's the only barrier you have. But because it's Native American land, Border Patrol's hands are kind of handcuffed on how they can patrol there. They're allowed to patrol, but they're not allowed to put sensors. They're not allowed to put certain cameras in those areas. They're not allowed to drag the roads. And dragging the roads means that you put the tires in the back and you smooth out the dirt so you can come back and see how many footprints there are in the sand, because that's actually how we do the Border Patrol work. And so all those things are not allowed to be done on the reservation.
Which
And
doesn't
who
make sense to me
it
because that's
doesn't.
a deterrent. We want to deter. We don't want to play gotcha because at that
But
point it becomes
there's a lot of
dangerous.
money. There's a lot of money involved, you see, and a lot of the people that are living on the reservation are involved with the drug cartels and they're bringing drugs into the country. So the Native American Council, you have people that get voted on. And if your constituents are making money off the drug trade, well, they're only going to vote for individuals to be leaders in that council that are willing to go against the government and say, we don't want you guys dragging roads. We don't want censors here. We don't want. So it's just been a nonstop battle for many years. And who knows this? The cartels know this. So that is the main corridor for heroin, methamphetamines, fentanyl, marijuana is still coming through there, and human trafficking, of course, because they know how open the area is, and they also know that there's no cooperation from other law enforcement in the state. And at the same time, media is not going to go down there. If you came down here and you wanted to go and see that area, first off, you'd have to stay 2.5 hours from that area of the border. And then you'd have to ask for permission from the Native American tribe to be there and film, and they won't allow that. So it's kind of an unkept secret that the cartels also know about very well, and they've been utilizing this for decades to bring drugs into the country.
So you're telling me, Art, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's still happening today.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Absolutely. It's still happening to this day. And as an example, when you would see the caravans and the groups that were coming across and we would see them on television, there's a very famous video during the Biden administration where they were very upset and there was 300 people that knocked down the barrier in El Paso, Texas. I don't know if you ever saw that. So
mm,
there was 300 people. They wanted to come into the United States. They took down the fencing there in Texas, in El Paso, and it was 300 of them, and everyone was shocked because of the video. That same weekend, there was over 3,000 that crossed on the Tohono O'odham Nation, but no one was there to film it. No one talked about it. So that's how much more overrun agents were getting and still are getting in those areas of the border.
what could be done about that? Is the administration aware that this is going on?
They're aware, but look, the big problem is you have to go head to head with Congress. You got to go head to head with the governor of Arizona, and then
Mm,
you have to go and make sure that you have a proper sit down and you explain things to the Tohono O'odham Nation Council, the tribal members there, that you're going to have to enforce them. I've always suggested go after the gaming industry. Look, they have a lot of casinos. If you start going after that, maybe that might make a difference. That's always been my suggestion. But that's why I keep saying all elections are important. Your governor, your Congress, your state Senate, everything is extremely important
and your
in order to get
judges,
cooperation. Oh, the
because you
judges
could catch them and they'll be like, oh, yeah, it's okay. Let them go.
that's why these attacks drive me crazy. These attacks that you saw, I mean, there was just a shooting in Portland where they attacked Border Patrol agents. Unfortunately, there was that shooting in Minneapolis, and this lady lost her life. I mean, we'll touch on that, of course, but
Yes.
for the longest time, we have had attacks on Border Patrol agents and the prosecuting attorneys or the prosecutor, the AUSA, when you call him, he says it fails to meet prosecution guidelines. I've seen agents get hurt and have to go to the Department of Labor and fight for their injury, all right? All the while, the person that injured them and attacked them is already out in the streets and they were never prosecuted for injuring a law enforcement officer. That's the message that they've been getting for many years. That's why we're seeing these attacks on agents, because the message to them is they're not going to do anything to us. They're not going to prosecute us. We can get away with it, no consequences. That's why you're seeing all this uptick against law enforcement.
So there's a few things going on there, and I'm glad you bring it up because there was different videos of that
Mhm.
scene in Minneapolis, and they used the one where you can't really see the front of the car. Okay,
Right.
which in my opinion was the most discriminating because you can't really see what's going on. Okay, and nobody likes loss of life, but let's just stick to the facts. The gentleman who is an ICE hero who's been with the organization for a very long time, 6 months ago, he was in a similar situation when he was run
Right.
over and injured very badly. Okay. So he is not looking to be a hero. What he's doing is following protocol. Okay? So he's about to get run over. You're defending life. There's no way that they have any right to get out. Then you have
Right.
CNN, okay, coming out and with a title on their media about how I shouldn't have been there, and
Mhm.
that they took a life, an innocent life. Well, then on the other hand, who's this woman? Was she petitioning, like using our First Amendment right without interfering in law enforcement and following the laws? No. She was a huge activist who was a mother and had children. And I think to myself, because I'm an activist, we all are in a certain degree,
Right.
because we know our stuff. So we're going to defend the children at the school boards. We're going to, defend, our First Amendment rights and our Second Amendment rights, that without that, we wouldn't have any other rights. And, but yet, we would never interfere
No.
in any type of law and order or anything like that. But she left her children, okay, to go be an activist and fight for something I don't think she really understands, and then try to run over. I mean, what the hell are these
Right.
crazy
Look,
lunatics thinking?
I have a 12-year-old daughter,
Oh,
okay? And
13.
and and all right, well, so and every time I would go out to the field, I would go into it would be early in the morning, I would say goodbye to my wife, I'd kiss my wife goodbye, and I'd walk into my daughter's room and she would be sleeping and I would hug her and I'm in full uniform at this time right before I go out the door and I would lean down into her, hold her and just kind of smell, you know how everyone's got their and she
Yep.
had her and I would smell her face and her neck, her hair, and I would close my eyes and I would always say this prayer and I said, "Dear God, if today is my last day and something happens to me out in that field, make sure that the last thing I remember is at least the smell of my daughter."
Oh my gosh.
None of us wake up in the morning and go out wanting to kill somebody. None of us put our uniform on and go out to destroy somebody's life. We pray that we come home without having to take somebody's life, and we pray that we come home without our life being taken away as well, because we have family and we have children. And I would do that all the time when I would go out to work. And here we had this lady that I mean, I feel bad for her. I think she was brainwashed. She was so indoctrinated by the media telling you that ICE is evil, that Border Patrol's evil. She was so indoctrinated by politicians that would go to press conferences and say, "You have to fight, you got to resist, we can't give up, fight back." That's what happened to this lady.
She
She
was
went,
used.
dropped off her child at school. She dropped off her child at school, and then she made a conscious decision to get in her vehicle, go to this place in her way to protest, and then made a conscious decision to drive her vehicle towards another human life. Let's forget that he was an agent. Let's forget that he was armed. Let's forget that he was doing his job. Let's concentrate on that. She made an active decision to drive her vehicle towards a human life. That's what happened. And you're right. You look at the video, and as you can tell, there's different angles. But if you see the rest of the videos, the agent's vehicle that shot, it was in front, like towards the passenger side. That's why he came out. That's why he was in that area. And I've heard people try to defend it, and I understand it, but I think they've overcomplicated. I heard people say, "Well, look at the angle of the tires. Her intentions were to run him over, and look at this." And look, I have responded to over 90% of these shootings in the Tucson sector in my career because I represented agents. I was part of the union where I represented them. So I went to all the shootings, I went to all the use of force. I guarantee you, this agent was coming across, and I'm just going to break it down to you from what I saw the video and from my own experience. He was coming across. There was an exchange of words from another agent in that window. I don't know what the exchange was, but judging by her actions and the way she decided to drive away, it wasn't "Thank you very much, sir, I'm going to leave." I guarantee you that wasn't the conversation. So she was very aggressive. You can see the car go in reverse, and then you can see when she hits drive because the tail end ducks, like it tucks in to move forward. That agent was standing in front of the vehicle. He heard that engine. He heard the engine rev up. He saw the front grill and the front hood of that vehicle coming towards him. He had his gun and he shot through to stop the threat. And he got hit and he moved out to the side after he got hit. So people on internet that are attacking him saying, well, he could have moved out of the way. This isn't the Matrix. This isn't a movie. You cannot press reset. This is reality. And I think that's where people don't understand it. I think the agent was fully justified in the shooting. I feel bad that a life was taken. I truly feel bad because I think this lady was a victim of her own echo chamber. That's what it happened. That's what happened. She was a victim of her echo chamber. So I feel bad. But at no time did this agent decide, I'm going to go out and shoot somebody today. I guarantee you that those were not his intentions. And I think it's going to be a long process because, as I said, I've responded and I've been involved in a lot of shootings in my career. What's going to happen is I believe he's going to get cleared of the shooting by the federal government.
Yeah.
Office of Inspector General is going to look at it. They're going to investigate it. Probably a sector intel team is going to investigate it. He's going to be cleared because he did nothing wrong.
Yeah. Now
You're-
imagine if he wasn't cleared, okay?
Right.
Like what a lot of law enforcement agents go through, like police officers in blue cities.
Well, that's what's
Okay.
going to happen, though. That's my point. He's going to get cleared by the federal government, but then everyone's going to say that it was fixed and that Kristi Noem cleaned everything up. Whatever. They're just going to accuse him that he shouldn't be that he is a murderer and he did something wrong. The state can, and the local authorities can then press charges. People need to understand that. So he can face criminal charges from the local authorities and from the state authorities, which I fear that is what is going to happen. And I know I've heard rumors out there of people that said, well, the federal agents are immune from prosecution. That's not the way it works. They're not immune from prosecution. I hate to disagree with those that have said it, but I'm telling you, I've been involved in a lot of these situations and I've seen where, yes, they can be charged by criminally by local or state authorities. This is going to be then a long, drawn out process. Good luck finding 12 jurors that are able to sit on that jury and be impartial, especially after the mess that everyone in the media is creating. So I think it's going to be a long, long process. I feel sorry for this agent. This is not going to end anytime soon. He's going to unfortunately have to deal with a lot more issues moving forward.
Well, and here's the other thing. You're talking about Minnesota, who right now, out of all 50 states and maybe even the world, okay, has been dealing with the biggest unveiling of corruption
Right.
in probably human history, okay? So guess what? Politically, because they politicize this, right? Politically, they want to have a distraction. And this is why the left tells them, get in their face, do this and that. Because they want the right side or the law and order side, right? To look like they're attacking because they want to manipulate. And they got it. They got it this
Yes.
time. So I have no doubt that what you're saying is true, and we should all keep our prayers for this ICE agent who has not been injured once, at least twice, doing his
Right.
job and not running away from a situation. Okay, those are the type of law enforcement agents that we need, as they say, balls to the wall. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna defend, you're gonna do, and do your job.
It's going to be difficult, though. I tell people all the time. And even that, then, let's say he would get cleared from any criminal charges, state and locally, he could still face civil charges. So somebody can still, come after him monetarily. I don't know the agent personally. I don't know what type of insurance he has, liability. A lot of us carry liability, when you're out there in the field. I'm retired and I still carry liability because I constantly get death threats and I don't know, when I'm going to have to use force to defend myself or my family. But I don't know what liability he carried or what backing he would have. Or, I mean, he's ICE, so I know they don't have a union. I don't know, man. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult moving forward. I feel bad for the guy.
Well, so just when your pension begins doesn't mean that the liability is over. That
Right.
you are a lifelong law officer and people have seen your face. You've been all over Newsmax, you've been all over Fox and other stations because of the work that you've been doing, and we're grateful. And that's why I say I start off the show with thank you for your service. And
Thank you.
hopefully this country needs to get through this. But it also makes me think, when you were talking about what's going on in Arizona with the tribes, and we can only follow the law. So
Right.
we hope that, and I suspect that everything is being evaluated of what they can do. There's so much cleanup after the Biden administration. So you have teams and teams of attorneys, you have teams and teams of everything going through to try to permanently not only reverse but permanently install ways that aren't just going to be taken away. When Biden came in right away, he all the executive orders that Trump had placed in, he reversed.
Yes.
So that can easily happen again. So you're right that you say all the elections matter. But I also think what President Trump is doing, and this really goes to the heart of it, he wants to go to the head of the snake. We've never had someone, okay, who had that kind of audacity to take on the head of the snake. And this is what happened with Nicolas Maduro, okay? And it's such a beautiful way because Pete Hegseth and everybody who's been involved, Marco Rubio, okay, they all worked together. There was no whistleblowers or calling CNN saying this is going to happen to ruin
Hmm.
the plan. And guess what happened? When that happens, you go in, you go out, you do your mission. No one gets hurt. There are no casualties on either end, okay? And Nicolas Maduro, as we know, and his wife, which a lot of people don't know this, Sylvie. A lot of people don't know this, but I know you do, okay? She's an attorney. And some say that she's the one who really runs everything because Maduro has like an IQ of 80. I mean, this is what I've been reading. I
Right.
don't know. What do you know about that?
No, I know she worked for the prior president, Hugo Chavez.
Mm,
I know she worked for Hugo Chavez for quite some time. So she's been involved in the government for a long, long time. And I think the operation that they did was the right thing to do. But you touched on a very, very important point, which is I think the most important point that people need to understand. There was no whistleblowing that they were going to do it. And that's what's important. And, you hear so many individuals give opinions on going down into Mexico and how the cartels are very rampant. I've talked to people and I've explained it. The drug cartel, specifically the Sinaloa cartel, has been involved and is involved in 168 different countries worldwide. Keep that in the back of your mind. 168 different countries. That's just it's insane. And we're not dealing with knuckle draggers. It's not what we see on TV. If you look at the shows like Cartel or what's it called? The Cartel shows, the series that comes out on Netflix. You're not dealing with these just urban cowboys. These individuals, as I stated earlier, some of them have had their children in the United States. So those children have gone to schools in the US, they've gone to universities in the United States, they've studied business administration. They run their criminal network like an actual Fortune 500 company. And they have billions of dollars. They have amassed billions upon billions of dollars from drug smuggling, human smuggling, they've gone as far as going to the farmers in different parts of Mexico and extortion on those that are importing goods into the United States legally. So their criminal network reaches all over the world. So I don't think it would be that easy to go into Mexico and try to get cartel leaders because one, there's more than one of them, right? That's the big problem, and there's going to be leaks when it comes to that. It's inevitable. So it just would make it more difficult. And you got to remember, a lot of the people in Mexico, it's almost like a Robin Hood feeling to them. A lot of these drug smugglers, they have helped the school system. They helped, soccer fields, baseball fields. So they know how to do it. And I think it will be a lot more difficult if they decided to go into Mexico. I think we're doing the right thing. I think President Trump's doing the right thing, trying to hit them as hard as he can with the people that are here going back south. The sanctions, I think, have proven to be a big deal. And we also got to remember, Mexico's right there. It isn't Colombia or Venezuela that it's way down there, right? Mexico would be right at our doorstep. So it's a completely different animal, completely different beast. You have to work it a different way. I've always suggested, and I talked about it constantly, and they're doing it because I'm still in contact with a lot of the people. Look, I'm retired, but as an advisor for the Federation for American Immigration Reform, I still do a lot. And a lot of it is because I've been that voice. I've been that vocal. I've gone to Congress. I've gone and spoken to them. So they still call me and they ask me, "Hey, Art, what's the deal?" And I still go out to the field, not as an agent, but I go out to the field to see what's going on, and I talk to the agents and I get explanations of what's going on. So I'm still the reason I kind of retired, to be honest, is because I was so vocal and I went to the rallies and I spoke in favor of President Trump that I was under investigation all the time
Oh,
by the agency for being vocal. And that's just that comes with it, right? But I'm still doing it and I'm still out there. And they've started doing southbound operations. They would never do southbound operations. If the drugs are coming north, money's going south. So now they've started to do southbound operations, and that's been a huge hit against the cartel because you're hitting them in their pocketbooks. You're catching that money going south.
well, here's the other thing, because what was very interesting was two things. Number one, the Venezuelan people, boy, were they happy to be free.
Yes,
So no matter what the left narrative, oh, and they're so crazy because I can't believe these lunatics are saying this. Oh, release Maduro. That we want to take over the territory. No, that's not how it works. And speak to your Venezuelan friends. Do me that favor.
right.
Find your Venezuelans and just ask them straight out, hey, what's the deal? Is this good? Is this not good? And I
They
guarantee you're
love
going to
it.
get absolutely. And the other response, which I found was very interesting, is the response from our politicians, okay, our neighboring friends, like President Sheinbaum, okay. Her response was not at all very, very kind, because I think it really frightened her because we know that the Mexican cartels, correct me if I'm wrong, the Mexican cartels control government in Mexico.
They're
You
embedded.
argue
They're
that?
strongly embedded. There's no way around that.
Okay. So the same similar response we got out of Cuba, okay? Similar response we got out of any socialist country that is slightly corrupt that we're aware of was not taken too kindly because I think they recognize that they themselves might have to go to war with the cartels. So they don't want to get involved. They like their cushy position right now. They know that maybe they get a kickback. Okay, a lot of them do, right? To keep their mouths and shut and their eyes away. But then you hear the rest of the world and who understands what's going on, and how quickly this happened in 6 minutes. They were in and they were out. But what do you think? I know you're not an attorney, and either am I. But Maduro was brought back to New York where the charges for him were made originally by the Biden administration, which is very
Right. That
interesting.
that's a very interesting and strong point. People forget that one. They don't want to talk about that one. It's Trump that's the bad guy.
Right, right. So we'll see how that pans out. But I have a feeling with his kind of lower IQ than his wife, and I'm sure they have them separate, he's probably singing like a canary right now to try to cut a deal. Because this is what these type of people typically do, especially if they think their life is over anyway. So I'm sure he's trying to cut a deal. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, I am aware that somebody that worked directly close with him, I believe it was somebody with the defense secretary for Venezuela, is already here. He was arrested prior, and he's going to testify. I've also known and I've seen through different circles that there's different individuals from Mexican cartels that are here that are also going to testify,
Wow.
possibly against Nicolas Maduro. So I think he's at a point where at some point he's going to have to cut a deal. I think he will. I mean, look, the United States, we're not a perfect country, and we all know that. but we're the best country in the world.
Amen.
And one thing that I can tell you is the higher up intel guys and the guys that are really collecting the data and see, they're not stupid. They're just not stupid. They know how to, dot their I's and cross their T's. And if they got to a point where they said, we're going to get criticized if we go into this other country and take him and bring him to America. They knew they were going to get criticized. President Trump was fully aware that he was going to get criticized. I've been in that Oval Office with President Trump when he talks to people and he makes decisions. I have that insight. I've been there. I guarantee you, President Trump said, can we do it? And do we have enough intel that shows he's wrong? He knew that he was wrong. He knew that he was guilty. But President Trump, I guarantee you, asked that question of his leadership. Can we do it? And do we have the evidence to prove that he's guilty?
Wow.
And once that intel was told to him, absolutely, and it was shown that we had it, that's when the United States said, we're going in because we know we're right. We're going to get criticized, but we know we're right. Kristi Noem, I'm switching gears here. She came on and she did a press conference after the shooting in Minnesota. And she was asked a lot of questions. But one important thing that she talked about, she said, I cannot talk about all the things that are happening because the FBI is investigating and we have intel investigating the shooting. Why did she say that? She said that because she knows what evidence is clear and she doesn't want to taint and ruin the evidence moving forward if there is and when there is court proceedings. President Trump and the United States government is the exact same way. They know exactly what they were doing. They know that they can do it. It was legal. They wouldn't jeopardize it any other way. And at the end of the day, when it all comes out in the wash, they're going to realize that the United States was right. The problem is those that are not in the investigation and those that are not being investigation, they can spread any narrative they want, which is what CNNs do and all these other media. So they're spreading whatever narrative they want to spread, and the sheeple are following along with that narrative, and that's where it gets dangerous.
I think you're 100% right because Trump, and his inner circle people, there's a reputation there that he plays 3D chess, right? So he doesn't just do something
Right.
emotionally. Things are worked out step by step. How is it going to affect it this way? Is it going to affect it another way? And the reality is he knows he's got 3 more years.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got to build it up so solid, whatever he's doing for the next one, for the next election.
Well, honestly, I think we have, I can say we have 1 year, and then I'll tell you in December if we have 2 more years, because I think the midterms are going to be very important. Look, if we lose, and if the conservatives lose the midterms, then we don't have 3 years, unfortunately, because I think that the last 2 years, they're going to be so embedded with a Congress that's going to be trying to come after him. I fully believe that the Senate is going to be there and make sure nothing happens moving forward. But we're going to be so inundated with, hatred and groups that are just going after him that maybe we're not going to have enough time to get everything done. And I think that's why elections are important, man. I'm telling you, your governors are important. Your school boards are important at this point. To be honest, your school boards are very important because that's where they're getting them. They're getting the kids in school.
Yes, yes. Well, I'll tell you a secret between me and you. Don't tell anybody. So I'm here located in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Pennsylvania, we know a lot of shenanigans happen just like in
Yes.
Arizona. All right. So
Yep.
we're like brothers and sisters, our states, because we're part of the as they call, the 6 very important and states in this kind of situation. So you hear in the news, all they've been talking about is Maduro, Venezuela, and drugs and cartels. Okay. But I'll tell you this much, when those negotiations start coming, because he's going to try to negotiate, all right?
Right. Oh, he is.
One of the things that Venezuela is known for is tampering with elections.
Mhm.
And there's been a lot of talk that they were involved with the smartomatics, the machines. So I'm hoping, Okay, here's the FYI. I'm hoping that there will be more discovered about the machines in Venezuela because we know that that was the stopping point between China and Russia and some other countries who wanted to control our elections. So if that happens, okay, I think because the president before Maduro was picked up, for the last 2 weeks before that, what were we seeing in the news? 2020
Right.
election, all the numbers, all the facts coming. That's not a coincidence that 5 years later, all this stuff is coming out. I think they're really setting us up for setting the masses to understand that, just because the election happened, it was 5 years ago, doesn't mean that we can't move ahead and correct the things that happened. Because we do know that the president wants to clear up the elections and have fair elections, like every American citizen want a fair election. My vote should count just as much as your vote, not some dead person's vote or a group of illegals who voted 3 times because they were, believe it or not, innocent. But they're given a driver's license and they tell you go vote here, and and they just follow along, like you said, like sheep.
That's that's crazy when you start thinking about it, and listen to what you're saying, right? We want fair elections. I mean, what what's wrong with that, right? And we have individuals and political parties out there that are saying, you need to stop what you're doing. What you don't want fair elections? I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It
So
still shocks
racist.
me. It still shocks me, right? It's still, yeah, it's racist. It still shocks me because these are the same individuals that they can't figure out the difference between being here legally and being here illegally. They can't figure out, well, heck, they can't figure out the difference between a boy and a girl. Just be honest there, you know? It's just insane that we're having these types of conversations in this year when we were supposed to have flying cars by now, right? But no,
Although Elon is working on that, he
he
should have a
is.
prototype by the end of
I'm.
the year.
I'll tell you what, though, they can have them. I'm going to stay on the ground. I enjoy my American V8s. I don't care how much gas I'm wasting.
I'm a
Uh,
Hemi girl myself. I
there you
love to
go.
drive with power.
That's right. But isn't it crazy that that's the conversations
Yeah.
that's the dinner table conversations that we're having now in the United States. That's the debates that we're having. We have a group of people saying we shouldn't look into our elections and find out if they're fair. Okay, we should just be blind about them. We're having conversations that are saying we shouldn't have borders because everyone should be allowed to come. Well, how does that make any sense? How does not vetting people make sense? And I'm going to tell you why it's dangerous. And I'm going to share a story with you. And this is going to be, it's not a good story, but I'm going to share it with you because the people have the right to realize how bad it was under the Biden administration. This is firsthand knowledge story. I was there when this happened. There was an individual that came across the border illegally. He was with a huge group of other people. I don't remember how many there were, but there was a huge group. He was traveling with a 12-year-old boy. Okay. He claimed to be the boy's father. I talked to the boy. The boy, said it was his dad. I'm very fluent in Spanish, so I believe he was his dad. Am I 100% sure? I can't be because I couldn't fingerprint him. I couldn't vet him because he was under 14 years of age. I fingerprint the adult. It comes back that he had a prior arrest for child endangerment and child molestation in Detroit. I pull him out of the cell and I ask him, "Where are you going?" He was going to Tennessee. I said, is your child? Is this your child? He said it was his child. So I re-questioned the child. And he spoke enough to make me realize that he was the father and this was his child. And then he asks me in English. Okay, this guy's from Mexico. And he asked me in English. He goes, "Is there a problem with my record?" He knew there was a problem with his record already. That's why he asked the question. That's when I looked at him and I said, "You know English?" He goes, "Yes, I lived in Michigan for a long time." And I said, "Okay, so you're aware that you were arrested for child molestation and for endangerment of a child." And he smiled at me and he says, "Yes, but I was never convicted. I left back to Mexico before any conviction." I contacted the authorities in the city where he had been charged, and I explained to them that I had this individual in custody, had crossed illegally into the United States. He was asking for asylum now. And the authorities said, we don't have the money to extradite him on that warrant. I contacted my supervisor at the station. He came and spoke to the guy, and then the supervisor looks at me and says, Art, he wasn't convicted. He's asking for asylum. You got to push him forward as an asylum case. He was put on that bus like everyone else. He went to ICE. I don't follow up on these cases because at this point we're arresting thousands of people a day. But there is no doubt in my mind that that individual was granted some type of asylum, or not even, I wouldn't say granted, but he was allowed to go through the asylum process. He probably doesn't have his documents yet, and he's more than likely living somewhere in the state of Tennessee waiting for his court date, unless he gets arrested or he's been arrested, hopefully by now. But that is what was happening during the Biden administration.
I have to say thank you so much for you and your brothers and sisters who've been, doing this job in law enforcement, because how can your stomach not turn knowing, and especially, it's in the Bible, you're not supposed to hurt children.
I retired a month after that happened.
Oh,
I left a month afterwards.
incredible, incredible. Well, thank you for sharing that story because the folks don't know the kinds of situations that you had to deal with and still
Yeah.
dealing with. It's not black and white, folks. There's a lot of evil. There's a lot of levels of evil there, and there's a lot of loopholes, especially over the last 4 years. So many loopholes, and the enemy knew. The enemy knew what those loop. He knew what the
They
loophole.
do.
He
Look,
see
they
went
don't
through.
have, that's what people don't get. Like they'll talk about it and they'll say they're coming here trying to get a better life. It's a different type of upbringing. It's not the same. And I've said this before, and people they point the finger. Oh, look, big bad border patrol, American. He's got guns and he's scared. I'm not scared. I'm scared of the future for our kids. I'm scared of the future of this country. But when we're dealing with children from Central America and South America and from all over the world, they've lived a different life. Your 13-year-old from El Salvador is not your 13-year-old from suburban America. People need to understand that. During the Biden administration, the first day he was in office, we caught our first group of 300. They were waiting to come across. One of them was an 11-year-old child. And when I was talking to him, he said, if you talk to anyone here, you need to talk to me first. This is an 11-year-old telling me in full uniform that he's the one that needs to be talked to first. And I said, are you in charge? What's going on? He goes, I'm not in charge, but you need to talk to me first. And everyone was listening to this 11-year-old child. And I asked him, why did you choose to come now? And this is an 11-year-old from El Salvador. He looks at me and a partner that was there in full uniform, and he says, because your president said we could come here now and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh,
That's an 11-year-old child. That is what was happening during the Biden administration.
I mean, that's insanity. But before I let you go, Art, because we could talk all day. I mean, you're just a
Yeah,
plethora
you'll
of
make this
knowledge.
podcast 8 hours if you
Yes,
want to. I'll tell you
yes.
that.
But I have one more question for you
Hmm.
because I really, really need to know this. What do you think out of the recent events with Venezuela?
Hmm.
You have any predictions about Mexico? Because they are a neighboring country and so much going on. Any thoughts on that?
Look, I mean, I would be hopeful that moving forward there would be more cooperation, less lip service. They cooperate to a point, but you got to understand the structure of Mexico has always been they'll go after the cartels, but they'll focus on one cartel. And then there's another cartel that they know is operating, but they don't focus on them as much. So that always, leads to the rumors and people saying, why don't you go after that cartel? Is it because the government's working with that cartel? And that's always been up in the air. I've heard it my entire life. People need to understand, I was born on the border. I grew up on the border. I've lived on the border. I live on the border. I've been in law enforcement on a border and in a border state for close to 3 decades. I've seen it and I've heard real evil. And it's going to take a lot of unapologetic movement from our government, from our elected officials, from our law enforcement in order to stop this. And there's going to have to be a lot of negotiating with Mexico because it's not as easy as going into Venezuela or going into Colombia, especially when Pablo Escobar was in charge down there, I would say. So it's going to be interesting to see, but it's going to be a lot of up and down. It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions, I think, moving forward. But we got to keep on doing something. We got to keep on trying. We need to make sure that the message is sent out there. And I will tell you this. Look, you say your family is from Greece. My family comes from Mexico. My dad comes from Spain. So I have like the Spanish and the Mexican blood on that end. We cannot be afraid to start speaking up as Americans. And when you're called out and said, you're a racist, I'm not a racist, I'm an American. They ask me all the time, look, you were born in Mexico, you're Mexican American. How do you feel, when you're arresting people? And I stop them and I correct them. I'm not Mexican American. I'm an American. I owe an allegiance to one country, and that's the United States, the greatest country in the world. My father, who was from Spain, never called himself Spanish Mexican growing in Mexico. That's the difference. We need to stop breaking that up and admit we're Americans. The color of my skin, whether I'm dark skin, light skin, whether my heritage is from, Greece, Mexico, Cuba, Central, South America, Europe, whatever, you're an American. Start acting like an American and make sure that you're fully invested in making sure that America moves forward more than any other country.
Well, for one American to another great American, we thank you for your service. We thank you for your continued commitment, even though you're retired, but you can't get out of the game. Now with all
No.
that knowledge, we need you. And also, say hi to all the folks and Tom Homan, who, he's a good friend of ours. And who needs it at this age? You look at President Trump and how old he is. Does he need this? Oh my
Tom
God.
Homan's great. I'll tell you a little
You're
quick.
America.
I'm going to tell you a quick Tom Homan story.
I got to hear it.
So we're down on the border and we were doing a special with Dr. Phil of all individuals, right? And I don't know if Tom didn't know I was going to be there, but I showed up. We were interviewed together. You can find the clip. But before the cameras are rolling, Tom looks at me and he says, "Oh man, you guys brought art?" He says, "You really want to be censored because if there's one guy worse than me that doesn't care whose feelings he's gonna hurt, it's Art." So I have a lot of respect for Tom Homan. He's just an amazing individual. He doesn't need to do this, right? He just doesn't need to. Same with President Trump. They don't need to do this. But look, I think we need to point out that Tom Homan's doing a fantastic job. Kristi Noem's doing a fantastic job.
I love her.
And Chief Banks of the United States Border Patrol is doing an amazing job. And he doesn't get as much credit as he should. But just, Chief Banks, Michael Banks, I worked with him side by side out on the border. So when you look at Chief Banks and whenever you guys see him on TV, or if you are able to get him on the show, know that you're getting a 100% true, boots on the ground guy. And I'm very happy that he's the chief of the patrol.
Well, we thank you so much. Keep up the good work. And listen, we really want to hear from you again soon. Anytime you have a report you'd like to make, you're fully welcome because we want to hear the truth. The people need to know. I mean, we're not legendary news, okay? Nobody should be watching them. It's the podcasting.
That's right.
It's the media online where you could see it anytime. And then what happens is the people decide, what the truth is out there. And we thank you again.
Thank you so much.
God bless.
Thank you so much. I mean, to all your listeners and viewers, hey, don't just watch this. Subscribe and share it. That's the only way we win is if we spread the message. And follow me on my social medias. I'm on X. I was gonna say Twitter. I'm on X under Art Del Cueto AZ. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. And I got a show myself that I'm trying to push. I used to have a podcast before. It was just audio. Now I have a YouTube channel that I'm trying to push. And if you've seen this entire interview, you'll understand it's called 5 Strands with Art Del Cueto. So follow me on YouTube on 5 Strands with Art Del Cueto. I'm trying to make that grow as well.
Well, I'm going to go right now and subscribe as well. So
thank you.
Thank you again. Take care.
Thank you. God bless.
pass. One shot. One opportunity to stop the death of America. One moment. With the freedom of interest. But with DC written young.